Dumela, sao bona, sak pase, namaste, obshin, dubra otra, assalamu alaikum, hotep, buenas noches, bonsoir, good evening. Welcome everyone to episode 20 of the Lott, Carey Women in Service Everywhere digital couch, where we invite inspirational clergy and lay leaders and people who spread the word and the gospel across the world for the purpose of God here at Lott, Carey Wise. We are so blessed and honored to have you all here on behalf of our team. And let's show you who our team is. That would be the Reverend Emmett Dunn, who is our Executive Secretary and Treasurer. Dr. Gina Stewart, who is the president of our organization, Dr. James Victor, Dr. Angelita Stewart, who is the president of Women in Service Everywhere, and Dr. Brenda McBurrow, who is our first vice president, and Sister Lynette Richardson, who is our second vice president. We welcome you. My name is Doriel and I'm the host of this amazing show. And please welcome tonight, Reverend Gail Rice. I'm going to bring her in, and then I'm going to give you all the amazing things about her. But I thought she should join me to hear all the great things about herself.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Reverend Gail Rice. We are so blessed to have you. Let me be I'm just honored. I'm honored and I'm blessed to be able to have this conversation with Reverend Gail, who I'll regard her as during tonight. She is an anointed preacher and a teacher and a psalmist. I may need to have you sing a little bit. I don't know. You may have to do that. She's also a minister. Her gift has made room for her, and she preaches and teaches and ministers extensively at workshops, retreats, conferences, and worship services. That means you see her all over the place. She currently serves as the pastor of ministry development at Freedom Baptist Church in Hillside, Illinois, where the Reverend Dr. Craig Melvin Smith is the senior pastor. Well, in 2001, Reverend Gail accepted God's call to ministry at First Baptist Congregational Church, where she preached her initial sermon and was licensed to preach by the late Reverend Dr. Arthur D. Griffin, Sr., on February 8, 2022, and ordained as minister in the Lord's Church on November 9, 2007. Well, in 2015, she launched Fresh Fire Ministries, where people from all walks of life gather and are empowered to serve God and make a difference in the world. She served in various roles and capacities that include being a missionary in Ghana, West Africa, being the founding member of Out From Under, which is a substance abuse ministry, being a founding board member of the Abigail 7 House, a mentor to the women of Leslie's Place and Sister House, a chaplain at the Interfaith House, which is a homeless center on Chicago's West Side, a member of the Economic Justice Work Group of the Social Justice Faith-Based Advisory Council for the City of Chicago, the board member and cohort leader of Women Preach, Inc., the cohort leader, the new kind of preacher, Women in Ministry cohort, the Northern Theological Seminary, an instructor, preaching and communication of Northern Theological Seminary. This sister is very learned. She also holds a Bachelor of Arts of Organizational Management, summa cum laude, from Concordia University, a Master's of Divinity from Northern Theological Seminary, and is currently a D-Min candidate at Northern Theological Seminary. Reverend Gail is also Senior Director of Professional Development at Healthcare Information Technology Association in Chicago, where she's been employed since 2001. And on May 18th, 1996, Reverend Gail married Wendell C. Rice Sr., the absolute love of her life. And together they have 3 children, 6 grandchildren, and we cannot forget the Shih Tzu named Lexi. Puppies are important.
Yes, they are.
Thank you so much. So let me just give the protocol that we know to call here on the Lott, Carey Wise digital couch. There are 2 things that we ask. Number 1, please make sure that you share this. It is on our YouTube page at Lott Carey TV. And if you are not already subscribed, make sure that you do subscribe wherever you are watching from. It is also on my personal page, Doriel, and it's also within the Lott Carey Wise Salt group. If you do not know someone within these 3 groups, sharing is caring. So find it on Lott Carey TV, send them the link, and make sure you continue to support us. The other thing that we ask you to do is there are going to be gems. There are going to be just like amazing statements or aha moments that either Reverend Gail or myself may bring up during the conversation that we're not even aware of, that are not on our little cue cards, that are not a part of our questions. And so if there's an aha moment, please, please, please type it in the chat and let us know that you've heard it and that it's touched your heart so we can add it to the conversation. If there is a question that you have of the conversation that we're going to have, drop that in the comments as well so that we can see it and that we can share it. Reverend Gail, it's such a blessing.
Thank you. I am excited to be here and very honored to be here and looking forward to the conversation.
Excellent. Oh my goodness, there are people in Liberia who are watching.
Hello.
I'm going to put this up. So now let me just tell you a little more protocol. If you want to be called out, if you want to be shouted out in a good way, then make sure you click that link that's above that says we'd love to use your name so we don't have to say Facebook user. Okay. So that'll be a blessing. So thank you so much from Liberia. It is Thanksgiving in Liberia. And so thank you so much for sharing with us. And then someone already knows you because they said, yes, look at that.
Oh my. Hello.
So you have a fan in the house, please drop your name so that she knows who to send some love to. We would strongly appreciate that. So Reverend Gail, why are you joining us on the couch today? It sounds like you have, of course, a lot of things going on, but there's one thing in particular about creating safe, sacred space.
Yes.
Where you are and where you come from. Let us know what that safe, sacred space is like, and how do you bring that to people who need it? And then we'll talk about some of the work that you've done. Oh, wait.
Certainly. So
it's wait a second. This is who it is. Hi,
Dr. Angelita. Hi.
It's like 1:00 in the morning. Okay.
I know.
We'll try to
listen. I know.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. So my journey has been one. I grew up in the Black church. Grew up in a space that conservative theology, very evangelical in nature. And my journey has been such that I have experienced toxic encounters, patriarchal encounters, in some cases, denial of personhood. But it's like Reverend Dr. Renita Weems talks about how the church has harmed and hurt us, right? It's the place where that loved us, but also cast us aside. So that's been my journey. And it was difficult finding safe space. Excuse me. Difficult finding space that I could be myself. I always felt like I had to be someone else. So as I began to journey, I began to search for, I didn't even know the phrase safe, sacred space at that time, but I needed a place of belonging. And just in the course of encounters and ministry and the direction God has taken me, Spirit has moved and led me, people I have met along the way, I have found myself in safe spaces, and not of my own, but people who saw me, people who heard me, people who affirmed me, and made room for me in those safe spaces. So as God gave me opportunity, and opportunity came my own way, it almost was a calling to create these spaces so that other women, not just clergy women, but women as I encountered them in the church, would themselves not have to go through the process and the things that I went through, but they would find safe space right where they were. So it's one of the things that I do. I try to create safe space, whether it is inside the church or outside the church. So that is how I kind of fell into safe spaces, affirming spaces, loving spaces, caring spaces.
So for those people who are, because we do have some people who definitely are a part of the church who are watching this, 2 of the platforms that we're on are church work, right?
Yes.
Church platforms or church-related platforms. And so that toxicity might be unfamiliar because this is going to go far and wide. So
Yes.
give an example of what that toxicity may look like, what it
Sure.
may feel like, what it may sound like. And so I would ask that you think about macroaggressions and microaggressions, and what does that
Absolutely.
look like?
So the microaggressions were that I was in a system and didn't know I was in a system, right? In a system that was patriarchal, in a system that in many ways affirmed portions of my personhood, but other parts of who I am were left out. So once, meaning once I said I had a calling and that God had called me, well, that put me in another place. Once I began to move beyond singing in the choir or things like that, reading the announcements or those types of things. That was the microaggression, the pushback. Now, my particular church was affirming in many ways to women in ministry. It was a place where women could come and preach, but it was beyond the church and in our circle that I realized there was pushback that I didn't know because I kind of grew up in an insulated place. Microaggressions were, I experienced them, women who didn't know how to love on other women, didn't know how to be in a space where there didn't need to be competitiveness or those types of things. And I felt unsafe in the church. I felt unsafe, men who may have seen and had encounters in ways that were not safe. I didn't feel as though there was an avenue for me to speak and to tell someone about those types of encounters. So, yeah.
So we actually have, thank you so much. So the one thing that I want to just implore is for people, again, if you hear something that makes you say aha or like this one, macroaggressions, microaggressions, micro invalidations, and micro
Yes,
assaults. Thank you for the micro assaults as a new terminology that we will
that's a new
definitely be
terminology.
incorporating. Yes, thank you.
And sometimes the assaults didn't come, they weren't forceful assaults. They were hidden, right? One of the microaggressions, and also the church I grew up in was very affirming to women, but it also at the same time kept you in a place, in a box that you weren't supposed to get out of or step out of. And when you stepped out of that box, you are now attacking the system. You should have been silent. I couldn't question as I began to read for myself and study and all those other types of things. I began to realize that what you're teaching me, some of it, I need to, it wasn't a place of questions where I could ask questions. So it felt very stifling and unsafe because I didn't feel like I belonged anymore.
So you were connected to, along your path, to a group of women who shifted your thinking.
Yes.
A group of women who shifted your mindset, if we're going to use some of today's terminology, and who, safe to say, broke you out of the shell.
Yes.
And I'd love for you to talk about that group of women, who that focal person is, or that central person is, that was the, let's call the shape shifter in what is now your new theology about yourself as a woman.
Sure.
And as a woman preacher.
So I started out talking about my journey and encountering people along the way. I believe divine spirit. I was divinely led to spaces and places with people. So I was invited to speak or to preach for an event. It was a last minute event, and 7 Last Words here in Chicago, Saint Sabina. And if anyone watches Saint Sabina, this is 2012, that's 7 Last Words is heavy hitter. One of the people could not come, and I was suggested to be the 7th word. And just to give you an idea, it was Renita Weems, it was Dr. Jeremiah Wright, Dr. Renita Weems, it was Dr. Ozzie Smith, it was Dr. Reginald Williams, Dr. Marcus Cosby, and I can't think of the other person, and Gail Rice. So, I did the best I could at that moment. And Dr. Renita Weems knew I was extremely nervous. I was sitting right next to her. And afterwards, I finally said, God, this is what I have. And I gave my word and I sat down. Later that night, I received a message from Dr. Valerie Bridgman. And she said to me, you were fierce tonight. And I want to invite you to the Jarena Lee Preaching Academy. And all you have to do is get yourself here. At that time, it was in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, when she was at that seminary, which meant I just needed to get myself there. And I found out that it was orchestrated later behind the scenes by folks who wanted me there to be in that safe and sacred space. Now, was it something in the words that I used and as I preached at Saint Sabina? I think so, but I think they saw something in me and saw the opportunity to put me in a place where I could learn and a safe space. Well, I made my way there, and oh my goodness, in 2012, I was introduced to a group of women, a safe space where all of the embedded theologies, I was deconstructed, and I could do it in a safe place. I learned a methodology and a way of encountering scripture, encountering the text in ways that I had never seen or heard before, or had never been taught before. And I emphasize the safe space because that deconstruction can be painful. That deconstruction of what you thought was right or what you thought was what you believed. So I can say that I was in a mode of crisis. And I think I've said this before. I was in a mode of crisis because I had finished seminary. I had read all of the German theologians, and I was in a process of trying to find my voice, and I could not find it in what I had read and what I was reading and what I had encountered and engaged. And the Jarena Lee Preaching Academy did that.
Okay, so let me pause for a moment. So you just mentioned that you were in seminary and that you were reading all of you said German
theologians.
German theologians. Let me just pause parenthetically. Was there anybody who wasn't German and male who was on your required or recommended or even suggested reading?
No.
Second question. How long ago was this?
That was 2001.
Okay.
2002.
20 years. So I'm going to ask 20 years, 21 years. I'm going to ask anybody who is in this field since the past 20 years, if you have been either a part of seminary, whether you were a student, whether you elevated yourself to being an instructor, if you're a part of administration, somebody somewhere, whether it is Drew or Fuller or New York or Union, name the other seminary. Actually, maybe let's not name them. This is my question. Has the bibliography changed? And if it was changed, who are the non-German and female texts that have been added to the curriculum in the past 20 years? You can drop it at any point during this show. At any point. Okay. So I'm going to bring up some comments. Let me start back with. So you made a comment before about, let's say putting on face. And so this person said Dr. Gina Stewart calls it window dressing. Women are window dressing. So I think that was in relationship to the woman's role, their position, their seat at the table.
Yes.
Okay. And then this person stated dignitaries in ministry. Okay. And then so
in terms of that window dressing, I call it good worker bees, right? As long as women are good worker bees, because we get the work done. Dolores Williams said, if it wasn't for the women, you wouldn't have, there wouldn't be a church, right? We're good worker bees. We do the work. And when you start to move into spaces of leadership, that is when the opposition comes.
There's a little of this.
There's a little pushback. You might even get a title. You might get a little position, but you won't get the authority. So not having authority undermines the work that you may have been given because you don't have the authority to do it. So it is window dressing. We're pretty. We get the work done, and that's pretty much what happens for most of us in ministry until we find other spaces that affirm our total personhood.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing that. So I want to bring up this, finding the voice. It is indeed, it is painful, but very powerful when finding your voice. So when I mentioned seminary, this person said things did not change even at the most liberal seminary. Okay.
Not much.
Okay. And then thank you so much. Women are the backbone of the church. Yes. Thank you very much for sharing that. Okay, Facebook users, I'm going to need for y'all to drop your names. So here's something that I found. So you just mentioned the Jarena Lee Academy. Now, those of you who know who do this type of work, I cannot come on here without doing some of my due process. And so I looked up, and it was my listening time this morning on my way to work. And so I'm dropping in the comments. And so if you're on my page, you'll see this link directly. But if you just type in Jarena Lee and then go to on YouTube, you see a very, very, very impactful, it's about 20 minutes, 22 minutes. It is a dramatic presentation of an orator who is, it sounds like she's reading a part of Jarena Lee's biography. Very, very beautiful, beautiful rendition. And so I listened to that, and I would highly recommend that you take a look at that. So now let's get into Jarena Lee, who she was, who she still is, because her work is still going on, and how that has impacted you in finding your voice and the other women who have done it with you.
I didn't know who Jarena Lee was until I didn't grow up
until about 3 weeks ago.
I didn't know. I didn't grow up in the AME church. I grew up Baptist, so I had never heard who Jarena Lee was until I was invited to Woman Preaches Jarena Lee Preaching Academy, and that work, spearheaded by Dr. Valerie Bridgman. The academy is named for her because she was the first preacher, Black woman, I believe, in the AME church to preach. She received a calling, and she, regardless of the opposition, Jarena Lee continued to preach, even though she was not ordained, she was not licensed, or she may have eventually become licensed. I know she was posthumously ordained a few years ago by the AME church. But the spirit of Jarena Lee, her perseverance to continue when she knew she had a calling in the face of opposition, patriarchy, men saying that women aren't called, God won't call you. She continued to do so. So I heard her story. I read her biography, was greatly impacted by her biography and how she received her calling. So just any pushback or any experiences that I have now in the church, we now have these stories of women like Jarena Lee to go back and read, to gain inspiration that they did it, and so can we as well.
So going to this academy, there are other people there who have been in the work longer than you have, maybe walked alongside of you. What is the experience like? How did her work and the academy shift you? So let's go back to the microaggressions, the macroaggressions, the deconstruction, the finding your voice piece. What does that look like, feel like, especially so that we can get either, number one, more people to look for it,
Yes.
sign up for it, get to it.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's a denominational thing, it doesn't sound like it's denominational.
No.
It really sounds like it's cross denomination or cross the aisles, if you will. Then, and I know there's a one main, but then you said that they have sort of sprouted their wings.
Yes.
So what does that look like? What is, if someone wants to go, what are they going to experience?
You're going to experience, first of all, it's women. It's not denominational. It's women from all cross-denominational. Yes, she is. Dr. Valerie is a gift to the kingdom of God. It's cross-denominational. It's women from wherever, just not just and years of ministry. So it's people with emerging voices, people just receiving a calling, and others who have been in the work of justice and fighting, on the front lines forever, but they all have a common goal. Each are trying to strengthen their prophetic voice. So it's not just about voice, but it's about prophetic voice. And that's what Jarena Lee does. It helps preachers, women, Black women specifically for that academy, to strengthen their prophetic voice. It introduces a methodology, which I'm not at liberty to share because it is protected within the Women Preach brand, so to speak. But it introduces a methodology and a way of looking at the text and immersing oneself in the text, reading against the text. Because if you grew up in a conservative white church that taught white evangelical types of theology, which I did, it was Black church, and all of the dressing around my church, everything around it said Black church. But the theology in the church, I now know, but did not know then. But there was something even then that was not connecting with me, and I wasn't able to figure that out. I got to Jarena Lee, and I was able to figure it out. That I was hearing, white theology dressed up in blackface. That's the only way to say it, and it was not affirming to me. It was not connecting. So I get to Jarena Lee, and I find out that it's okay to read against the text. I find out that it's okay to question the text or to ask questions of the text that I had not. That was a no-no. You you took and you internalized what was taught to you, and you didn't ask questions. Those types of things began to deconstruct what I had a lifetime of being exposed to. So other women, some are there very confident, some were just as skittish and afraid as I was, but the space was affirming that said, all of us, all of you who are here, we see you, we value you, and we value your voice. So now, I went through that academy in 2012. I've been a cohort leader for the last 2 academies. And it's just amazing to watch the women. The first night, everyone's afraid, kind of, just nervous, don't know what they're going to encounter. And by the last day, you see this transformation that has taken place within them because they have been given something to be able to read the text, but not just in preaching itself, but now they have a sisterhood forever. It doesn't end when Jarena Lee Academy ends. You now have a sisterhood, you have a tribe, you have a place of belonging. And I think that is the greatest thing that happens within that particular preaching academy.
So I want to ask, I want to say something about that, something that you just said, and you have started Fresh Fire. I remember hearing the phrase fresh fire. I don't know who started saying it 15, 20, 25 years ago, but it was one of those sayings that just, was in every house of worship. The need at this time in our spiritual space, in our churches, and I'm literally not speaking about the last 3 years. This is before that. The need for hearing a different voice can be met with, and pushback is a tiny part of the word, met with, we've been doing the same thing,
absolutely,
the same way for all this time. We're still saving souls. People are still transformed. Why we got to do something different? Why we got to identify God past he? Let me just drop that. Why do we have to think about or incorporate these other ideologies that come from outside of our 66 books? Because what we're reading is the 66 books with a filter. Why do we have a need to have women shift their physical position from the third and the fourth row to the first row, or up onto the pulpit, or even into the main seat? Why can't they just stay and make the sweet tea and make the fried chicken and make the pound cake? Why y'all gotta be different? You still getting to heaven. Why you need to say something? And I'm being a little satirical about that, but that's because, and I want to use the term patriarchy gently. I want to use it very gently. There's never going to be any male bashing. That's not what we're here for. But we are asking, why did this need to be here now? Because people have had a need. Women have had a need. There's something, as you said, that when you sat in your seat, you felt that there was something that was still missing, and you could not figure that out. But there are other people around the country who have said, come on over here.
Yes.
And we're not throwing out our theology. We're just saying there's another voice.
Yes.
And that voice should be heard. Can you say a little bit more about why because the fresh fire, like this is part of the fresh fire. What may have happened, let's say 20 years ago, that started to move, to shift people into this thinking that we needed something a little bit with a different lens?
People are experiencing, so we're preachers, we're ministers, we preach a word, but we experience the same things that folks experience in the pews, right? They're experiencing racism, sexism, classism. They're experiencing a phrase that I ran upon, that institutionalized intersectional oppression.
Ooh, wait
not my phrase.
Hold on. Say that again. Somebody type that in the chat.
Institutionalized intersectional oppression. That's a young woman named Danielle Thomas.
Okay.
I ran across that in an article on her website, Unfit Christians, and I've held on to that phrase, institutionalized intersectional oppression. They need more than just fluff in order to make it to the next Sunday. You want them back, right? They need more. Once they walk out the door, they want to know, what is God saying about this experience? What is God saying about George Floyd dying? What is God saying about Breonna Taylor and the way she died? What is God saying about corporate greed? What is God saying? What they want? A word from God. And the fluff and the shouting, the speaking in tongues, the hooping. Look, I'm all with all of that. I'm from the Black church. I enjoy a very engaged worship experience. But after people walk out the door, they need something to hold on to. That's why it's
right. So I'm gonna dial you back just about 4 sentences and say and ask the question. You said they need engagement. They need to hear, in essence, like a word from the Lord. And what I thought I was going to hear, because when you started speaking about George Floyd, when you started speaking about Breonna Taylor, I was wondering, at what point are you going to say, from a woman's point of view?
I guess that was just an assumption, preconceived assumption for me in this conversation.
Right.
And they need to hear it from a woman. I'll
right.
say
Right. So now,
because
for the record,
we bring something different. We
correct.
bring a different lens. We bring a different experience. And I'll use this experience. So you said, why is it important? Inclusive language. Sometimes we just can't say, we're getting ready to use inclusive language now. We just do it. I stopped in my preaching calling God he. I just began to call God by God's name. I didn't say anything. I just began to preach that way. And now people's ears are tuned to that. I don't have to just explicitly say it until people get used to it, right? They need to hear it from a woman's voice. So I preached the text. I preached the woman with the who came and poured her tears on Jesus' feet and the oil. And I said something in that sermon when I got to the portion about her being a woman of the city. And we know how that's been preached. It's been preached that she was a prostitute. And I even went back and researched that it goes all the way back to the church fathers in their exegesis of that text. She was labeled that way centuries ago, and it's kind of moved along the centuries. And here we are in the 21st century, and we're still calling her a prostitute. And I said something, to the effect, that's not, the text doesn't say that. It doesn't, there's no implication there, right? I said, but you all know how we make assumptions about people based on sketchy details. I said, yeah, Luke gave sketchy details. And we took that and ran with it. Well, some folks, that was an assault to what they have ever heard, because now I'm saying that Luke gave sketchy details. Yes, he did. He gave just enough. So it's up to us. Dr. Renita Weems says we need to read between the lines, read under the text, push against the text, to craft a story and to recreate those stories, those women, those biblical characters, their stories. That's why, because women bring something that men don't see in the text, because they don't have the same experiences that we have. We have a different lens.
So I want to take a moment out and for all who are watching, whether you're watching this live or on the replay, I intended to do this at the top of this broadcast, and I just want to do it at this moment. The church world lost an icon. We lost an icon. Reverend Dr. Calvin O. Butts of the Abyssinian Baptist Church in Harlem. He left us at the end of last week. Very painful to all of us. A pioneer. There's, of course, this platform is not the place for it, but definitely we have to give space for him, because he was such a soul shape shifter. I'll say that. And part of our, I want to say our let's say our icons of being just a great master of the word. And so I definitely just wanted to take a moment to recognize him. Now, with that, I wanted to also bring up something that's coming out. It's coming out. I guess no, it just came out a couple of days ago, and that is the Till story.
Yes.
The Emmett Till story, and this is about voice. This statement is about voice. The person who gives the information has a lens, and that lens will be used for comprehension and for construction of what the person delivering wants to convey. Hearing it from the photographer or from the reporter's perspective and the police officer's perspective, his removal from life paints a picture. The moment, those of you who know the story, you know the story. Those of you who don't, just look up Emmett Till. The moment that that Emmett Till's mother said, I want for them to see.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a picture that a number of us, if you had Jet magazine, if you had Ebony magazine, you remember the picture of her looking at him and then us looking at him. Perspective was very different. The storyteller said, I want them to get this image. She, the mother, a woman, wanted them to get the real picture or the other picture that does not want to be shared from other eyes. The word of God is similar because as you were speaking about what we were raised with, up until last year, I have to say, maybe last spring when we started this, there was someone who was on. As a matter of fact, let me shout out Reverend Dion Boissiere.
My sister.
Yes.
Is she on?
I don't see her on.
Okay, that's my sister.
Somebody tag her. Somebody drop her name in the comments so it can show up on her page and she can see it. She was the first person. Now, mind you, this is only 2021. She's the first person that I heard use the phrase Mother, Father, God, like on a public platform in a place of authority.
Mm-hmm.
And if anybody goes to that video or that interview and you see her say that, take a look at my face because I was like, we can say that? Wait, preachers can say that? Oh, is somebody coming to shut this off? Like, I was very shocked because I did not hear that. And so that was one of those, let's call it like a breaking of the eggshell, a bursting out. And I was very moved. And after the conversation, so let me just say for people who've not been in this seat right here that she's in, the after party is better than this actual thing is here. And so I said, Reverend John, like, how were you able to say this? She goes, oh, no. We can stand and we can have that moment to say that because of the focus and the reality at that moment. So thank you so much. So somebody shouted her out. Thank you. So hopefully she'll see it. So I was very, very moved that nomenclature
matters.
And it's brought in the same way 30, 40 years ago when the Black church said, you know what? Instead of us having the white Jesus on the wall, we're going to give him some melanin.
Yes.
And there were a lot of people within the Black church, outside of the Black church, it was like, well, what are you doing? You're changing the story. What we're doing.
But if they do research on that picture that was on everybody's wall back in the 60s, my grandmother had that picture. My great-grandmother had that picture. It was painted by somebody, I can't remember his name, but back in the 40s. And it was his own rendition of what he thought Jesus looked like. And it became a part of the culture. That picture was iconic and embraced by everyone. Yeah, I remember that picture.
Right. So I just think that, we're all understanding that voice matters and that whose telling the story matters.
Absolutely.
I can dribble a ball, but it's best in the hands of Michael Jordan.
And if you're struggling with language, if you're struggling with wanting to characterize or put words around more words around God than what you have or what that you know you have. Dr. Will Gaffney in her women's lectionary, in the back of it is just a whole list, a whole list of phrases that describe who God is.
So, wait, somebody who knows this text, can you find this text, grab the link to it, and drop it in the chat?
I have it on my desk right there. I can turn around and get it really quickly.
Or we
I
can
have
go
it
to
on
it
my
in the chat.
desk.
Okay. All right. All right. We got so moving forward, we want to make sure that you have some texts and some titles that people can refer to. All right, I'm gonna type that in.
There are two. The other one is on my shelf, but this lectionary in the back gives language, God names, and divine titles here in the back. It's a couple pages of them. If you want other language to describe who God is. Yeah. So first of all, you have to be deconstructed. It goes back to that whole deconstruction. You have to go back to that deconstruction to be able to stand. Yes, Dr. Will Gaffney is the business. She's the truth. It requires that deconstruction we talked about, right? And it requires a bit of courage to do that. Everyone, some folks internalize it. It's here, but have not yet been able to call God mother or mother, father, God, or whatever. It requires courage to be able to do that, to stand in the truth of what you now believe. Now, I haven't stopped believing what I believe about God. I just see God in a much more expansive way. I still believe God is a healer and a deliverer and a protector and all of those things. I still believe God is all that. But I see God in a much more expansive way, which has strengthened my voice to be able to describe God and to present God to people who want to see God in a different way. It requires courage, absolutely. And I called her doctor. I might be prophesying over Reverend Dion, but she has the courage and she believes what she says. She has internalized that. So for her, it was natural to say that about God. It's nothing she thinks about. I can say that for certain.
So as people are engaging in the work about the theology of including women in more prominent leadership roles within the church, not just from, let's say, at the side podium, but within the pulpit, and the voices that they are finding, that the women that they have raised are now taking on different levels of voice. How do you think that this is going to impact younger people? Because we're all about building capacity at this point. Our elders, let's say, namely Reverend Dr. Butts, other champions of our Black church, no matter the denomination, there has been a conversation over the past 10 to 15 years. We have to raise up a new troop. We have to raise up a new camp. And including the voice of the woman, the prophetic voice of the woman, how do you think this is going to impact a lot of younger people who have shifted outside of the church, who have walked out looking for something else? What do you think this shift is going to do about those younger people and the generation after them?
I think the shift will, they're looking for something different. They don't want the old church. They've turned away from the church. I think this generation, particularly, what is it, Gen Z that we're on right now? I don't know. They don't know anything about all of that. But at the same time, while we're trying to raise up a generation that is receiving and hearing the voices of women there's a whole other faction that's raising up a generation that's pushing back against those voices at the same time. It's perpetual. I think young folks want something different. They have what we did not have. They have social media. They have experiences. They're more global in their thinking. They aren't looking for oppression. They're looking for freedom. And experiencing oppression in the church and foolishness in the church, they're not looking for the hoop. They're not looking for that. They're not. My son is 26 years old almost, and he is just not turned on, quote unquote, by any of that. He wants to hear authenticity. He wants to hear, they want to engage the divine. They want to. I believe many of them want to be in the church, but they're not hearing what they want to hear. So we have to be intentional about creating spaces for young people. We can throw all kinds of stuff against the wall and hope that it sticks. But the truth of the matter is that they're looking for authentic voice. They're not looking for all the trappings and all the hyper sensationalism that happens in the church. They're looking for authenticity, and they're looking for a clear voice because they're looking for God as well.
So this is the last question, and it's about this pendulum swing. So I can recall being in conversation with clergy, let's say 15 to 20 years ago, about, let's just say, the shift that they saw coming of whether it be dress code of clergy in the pulpit, or dress code just to sort of along the way as you're in, of course you have to look a certain way. You have to have from the head to from the hair, the length, the texture, the color, down to the how pointed and high the shoes were. Right. Okay. Let's leave it right
all
there.
Of that.
Right. All of that.
All of that.
And when people started to shift I'll just tap on the music industry for a moment, but of course it's definitely related. When music started shifting and however it was shifting, and there were different voices and different rhythms in the songs that were supposed to be representing God, there were a number of, let's say, our older clergy who were like, oh my goodness, God is not in that.
Yeah.
If the leader is wearing that or that color or that fit, that, God is not in that. And we have to be very careful not to let the world into the church.
That was one of the most frequent phrases that was said. The world is creeping in the church.
Right. And so then now this is to be very middle of the road right now, because I talked about pendulum swing. The pendulum is swinging. The church of today and the ministries of today that are grabbing a lot of people who were part of the traditional church. When you look at who's standing on, it's not only the pulpit right now, it's the stage, literally and figuratively, or it's standing amongst the crowd. That pendulum swing is really swinging. But at the end of the day, when someone says, how many souls are now in the kingdom? Hearing that clear voice, that authentic voice, and the voice that is truly from God, is it really wrapped up in the 3-piece pinstripe or seersucker suit? Is it really wrapped up in the red bottoms? Is it really wrapped up in the matching gloves with the hat? Is it really wrapped up in the colored scarf with the pin for every anniversary day? Or is it in a book that we know is 66 chapters? And so it doesn't necessarily have to be answered here, but it's just something that younger people.
Yeah, those are the things they're questioning. They don't see how any of that makes any difference. They don't see why any of that matters. The suits, the matching outfits. We know, if you came from church like I did, matching outfits and us showing up, it was a sign of unity, and it showed that we were all together on one accord. But underneath that, hell was being raised all in the church when we were all looking alike, right? I grew up in a church that did high church. We did high church anthems, hymns. We marched in. We wore robes every Sunday.
We there.
So that is the tradition that I come from. We had a senior choir who sang all the anthems and hymns. We had the gospel chorus who sang the gospel songs. We had the young adult choir who sang the contemporary stuff.
You in my church.
That's my church.
We had a choir.
It was strange to me when I moved on to another church and we didn't wear robes anymore. I got all kind of robes hanging in the back. I'm like, ooh, I paid all this good money for my robes. I'm going to find somewhere to wear these robes. But at the end of the day, COVID showed us that none of that matters. The pandemic showed us that none of that mattered. All of the secrecy and the mystery around the table, communion, the Lord's Supper, however you want to talk about it. The people were at home with a glass of water or Mogan David, how do you say it? And a piece of cracker in order for us to do the sacrament. So for young people, at the end of the day, they don't see why any of that matters. I can recall in my church when it began to shift and folks, the young kids started wearing jerseys and sneakers to church. Oh my God, it was an uproar. It was an uproar, but either you want them here or you don't. The pendulum's shifting to the other side. I'm Gen X, so, I see some of the platform and all of, the lights, the camera, the action, the production. I really can't speak to that. I don't engage well there because I believe it speaks to my tradition, where I've come from. But if those kids are going to church, but I'm also concerned about what they hear when they get there. So that's a whole other conversation, because you can listen to some of those on those types of platforms and you raise your eyebrow at it. I don't want to, it doesn't matter to young folks. They don't understand all of the trappings that we had in the church. But they're showing up. Our churches are empty, traditional. They're empty, and they're packed in other types of expressions of church and worship. So it's something I think we need to take a look at and have honest conversations about within the church. What I was, and I know you have that was the last question, but what I was very much encouraged by at the Jarena Lee Preaching Academy, there were many millennial women, even younger. But I can't keep all these.
all the alphabet.
Then why I think Z Y that were there at the academy. So they're coming younger, and I think that's intentional on behalf of Dr. Valerie Bridgman to grab these young voices, because young people need to hear and see themselves. So as these other young emerging voices are beginning to be trained and sharpened and honed, I believe young folks will begin to listen, but they can't just hear us old folks all the time. Emerging voices need to be heard. They need to be seen. So Jarena Lee is very intentional about that. So I want to put a plug for Jarena Lee right here, the Preaching Academy. Absolutely. The Jarena Lee Preaching Academy will happen in 2024. So if you are a preaching woman and you are interested in sharpening your prophetic voice, get ready for the application to come out in 2023 for the 2024 Jarena Lee Preaching Academy. It happens every 2 years. Start putting your coins to the side now. Just get you a jar or something and put your coins in there and start to, fill that jar so that when the time comes and the application opens, you're ready. It will change your life. It will change your life. If you want to find other ways and other language in talking about God and engaging in God talk, Jarena Lee Preaching Academy is the place to be. Absolutely.
So somebody take that snip right there, make it a reel, put that on TikTok. Okay. Let's fire it up. So it really doesn't matter what denomination you are a part of, right? It's cross-denominational. You can find the different voice.
It's very ecumenical. Absolutely. All women from all walks of life, from all theological expressions, different denominations. some very conservative. Look, I have watched women sit in the seat and squirm because what they were hearing, they had never heard it before.
Okay, wait. So do you have do you need a recommendation from the minister in your spiritual house?
To go to Doriel Lee Preaching Academy? No. I don't recall that in the application.
Okay.
I mean, it's going to ask you questions and what have you. I think you may have to do a resume or something like that, or I can't, don't let me talk about the application because it's been 10 years and the application may be different, but you probably you do have to submit a sermon and that kind of thing. But you don't need a recommendation from your pastor, I don't think, or anyone. But don't quote me on that because I haven't seen the application in a long time.
So someone just said recommendation from your mentor.
Is that a question or are they stating that?
It looks like the person is stating that. So unearth that for us if you can as we're wrapping up. Is that recommendation like who be you? Who be you saying it? Right. So just let us know if you know a little bit more than we're not sharing. Then please do that. We have had such a good time, and it kind of feels like we definitely need to have you back.
Amen. I would love to come back. I have one other plug. So if you're a young if you're either a young woman or you are young in ministry, I just want to say to you that what we're talking about, or this discussion we may have had, you may not be there yet, but you desire to be there. You want your voice to be sharpened. Just know that you are enough right where you are. God knew who God called when God called you. I just want to encourage someone who may be listening. You are enough. Find yourself a circle. Find yourself some mentors. Find yourself some girlfriends who will support you, who will affirm you, who will also hold you accountable. But what I want you to know more than anything is that you are enough. And this is a journey. It's a journey and it's a process. So don't get discouraged. Keep going and stay on the wall.
Stay on the wall. On that note, I thank you so much, Reverend Gail Rice.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. It's been a great discussion.
Excellent. Those people who have been in the room with us, we've had looks like about 20 to 25 people, because I'm looking across 3 platforms, who have been with us during tonight. I do hope and pray that you share this out, even if as we are wrapping this up, because some people can catch this on the replay. There are a couple of things going on across the internet streets.
Always.
In different communities. And so if you know that someone really needs to hear this, please share this out, send them back to either Lott Carey TV. And we do pray and hope that you will become a subscriber so you get the notifications no matter where you are in the world, or if you're a part of Lott Carey Wise Salt, which is the Lott Carey Women in Service Everywhere, serving and learning together. That is what SALT means. If you did not know, we do pray that you are able to be a part of that. That is a private group, so come on in, and myself or one of the other folks will allow you in. It's great. We have a thank you. Facebook user, we would love to give you some love back. We appreciate you. And to Brother Douglas Moore, we appreciate you as well. Thank you for saying it's an excellent discussion. We look forward to seeing you all next month, same time, same station, where we'll have episode 21. You never know who's going to pop onto the Lott Carey Wise digital couch. So come on back. We want to say also that we are donned in the same color and attire because it is Thursdays in Black. I definitely don't want to end this conversation without saying that. And our Thursdays in Black, if you look up the hashtag Thursdays in Black, not only Lott Carey and Lott Carey Wise Salt, but ecumenicals across the world, including Reverend Dion, who definitely has another level of this.
Yes, she does.
To the advocacy and allyship. We stand firm with women across the world and the men who love us dearly and honestly, that gender-based violence needs to be brought closer to the forefront of people's conversations. There are still young girls who have been abducted and have not been returned. There are women across the world in every single country in this world who, because of their gender, are being mistreated. And we stand firm on Thursdays to dress in Black, to bring awareness to those. And we don't just dress it up, we also speak about it. And so we thank
Yes.
you so much for, thank you. And so if you just look up, you can look this up, Thursdays in Black, and you'll see people showing up, showing community, showing allyship with each other, that we want to let people know women matter.
Women matter.
And they should be taken care of, and they should be heard.
Black women matter.
And that as well, Black women matter.
Yes.
Peace and blessings. This has been a wonderful conversation. I'll see you all in the next episode. But if, of course, you're a part of Lott, Carey, Wise, Salt, you know there's a lot of things that go on there, and so I'll see you there as well. Oh, I have a feeling. Together we are stronger. Thank you so much. So peace and blessings. We'll see you all later. Reverend Gail, I'll see you in a moment.
Sure. Bye-bye, everyone.